quick start. Just put your hand up if you're listening. Okay, most of you. That's a good start. We'll get the rest of you a little bit later on.
And maybe if you can hear in the back.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I'm Daryl. I'm a communication and relationship strategist. I spend my time working with people to reduce conflict and deal with any of their communication and relationship challenges. And today I'm with my good friend Eliška.
Hello, my name is Eliška Čejpová. I'm the former web developer and Scrum Master and somebody who likes to learn about listening and hearing and getting a feedback and giving a feedback.
Nice. So we're going to chat to you about a few things today. So first of all, why it's important. I mean, it might sound obvious, but we're just going to highlight why it is important. Then there's going to be some tips and tricks. So 5 things we'd like you to take away with you today. And then because we like a little bit of interactivity, there's going to be some chances for you to practice it towards the end. And then we might have time for Q&A as well. So, quickly, first of all, how would you rate your listening skills? Just interested to see how well you feel you listen. I'm the best. Maybe a few people here think you're good. Pretty good. I could improve. I'm bad at this. And then just what are we doing? Just for those people who weren't listening at the beginning. So, okay, I could improve. Pretty good. We could going down. Bad at this. It's interesting.
The person who is asking what we are doing, we're at Agile Prague and we will try to learn about listening. So you're at the correct place, you're at the right place.
But very good, so I could improve. So there's always room for improvement, which is great. So hopefully this is what we're going to cover today.
Well, Daryl, I have a colleague who shares very similar traits with my kid, my 4-year-old kid. Every time I want to share with them something, they're listening and they're nodding. And then I ask them a follow-up question, and they're like, I'm sorry, what? And they continue their discussion, their topic. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, I'm telling you very clearly what I want from you, and you're just waiting your turn to tell me your point of view. What is happening, Daryl?
Well, there's many things happening there. We're going to dive into it, but a lot of it can come down to the fact that there's actually a difference between hearing and listening. So hearing is really passive, and it's physiological. It's literally just the sound as stimulus coming into our ears. Listening is actually something active and psychological. It's, okay, the sounds are coming in. How do I interpret them, make sense of them, and make meaning of them? And the point that you just brought up, we'll talk on in a little bit.
So does it mean when I'm good at hearing, it's something my doctor is telling me, and when I'm good at listening, that's the skill I'm looking for?
This is the skill we're looking at, yes. Good distinction, I like it. So why is listening important? Well, it's the #1 reason that leads to miscommunication and misunderstanding, which then leads to strained relationships, which then leads to conflict. And also, we've got a lot of devices here. So our attention and our ability to listen is being challenged at all times. Now, some people say that technology is bringing us closer together and helping us to connect more readily. But I think there's also an argument to say that actually it's driving disconnection. So this is all the more reason why we need to talk about it and focus.
I have a very simple question. Anybody heard in their relationships or in their workplace, but you're not listening to me? I feel you.
So it's important that we feel heard, essentially, which leads on to the next question. What does it feel like when you're not heard? So if you're talking and you don't feel like the other person is listening, what does that actually feel like? How does that leave you feeling? Okay, frustrating, annoying. Ignored, small, wow, okay. That's an interesting one. Uncared for, yeah. Don't know how to scroll with this.
Lonely. Wow, okay.
Shitty, thank you for the honesty. I think that's what a lot of people wanted to write, but we're being polite. Like shit.
Well, thank you for the honesty.
Yeah.
It can be very frustrating.
Oh my God,
that
okay,
is
wow.
a lot of that.
Okay. So there's a lot of frustration, unheard, disappointment. Frustration seems to be the main one. But we're getting the sense of what it actually feels like to be unheard. Again, all the more reason to talk about this. SAS? I'm not sure what that is. Okay. Quick question, just show of hands. How many people here feel that improving your listening skills would give you better professional relationships? Okay, great, thank you. And what about if improving your listening would improve your personal relationships? All right. So again, you're in the right place, so hopefully we're going to give you some hints and tips about how you can do that.
Can be a lot of frustrated people.
But before I do, I'd like to know, how would it improve? What do you want to improve in your professional life? What do you want to improve in your personal life? So this is just an open question. How would your professional, personal life improve with better listening skills? Be on the same page, patience. Nice, I like that one. Make people feel heard, valued, and understood. So important. That's what I like to do when I work with different clients. Know people's pains, empathy, understanding, deeper connections. Nice. This is what we all want. We all strive for deeper connections with each other. And that can be from a professional perspective, but also a personal one. Trust, understanding.
Yeah, I have another question. There was understanding of people or the needs of people around me. Do you ever feel that you're listening to people, but then after quite some time, they come up to you and they surprise you because their need or problem is completely different? Any parents in the room? With teenagers? Yeah.
The weary hand going up there as well.
So
yeah.
baby, what's the problem? Nothing. Are you sad about something? No. Do you think it's true? Yeah. So there's the opportunity for learning. Oh,
nice. Yeah, there's a lot of things there. Thank you for sharing that as well. Okay, so let's get into a bit of what we're going to be talking about before I share the 5 points. Has anybody heard of the psychologist Albert Morabian? Anybody heard of it? You might have come across this before. So total communication falls into, he proposed, these 3 categories: words, tone, and body language. Does anybody know the percentages of total communication that this falls into? Yes, go on.
Words 7% around.
Yep.
Tone of voice around 30 and body language around 70-60.
Spot on, thanks, Bogdan. Yeah, words 7%, tone 38%, body language 55%. So again, we listen in different ways, not only to the words that people are using, but their tone and their body language.
You're completely right, Daryl. I agree with you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No? Yes, okay.
Yeah,
Very confusing messaging if things are not in alignment. Because, yeah, we all know people who say, how are you?
I'm very, very well. Very well.
We're going to believe her? Not really. Okay, so we need to listen to all of these different components. Thank you for your acting as well. Okay, point number 1, focus. We've already talked about the fact that we're in a very distracted world, so the competition for our attention is pretty fierce. So the ability to be present and focus and just be here with that person really shows that I'm paying attention. So how many people have got their devices out? Okay, you're filming, that's fine. But if you're on your device, you're already putting a barrier between yourself and somebody else. So if you can, focus, be in the moment, and be with that person.
Well, actually, Daryl, I hate my friends. Not true, but for this purpose. I hate my friends. Oh, every time we go out, they have their phones on their table. And they have it screened down. So they're like, I'm not looking at the phone. Actively telling me, I'm not looking at the phone. I don't believe them because they don't pay attention to me. And then I say, you don't listen to me. And I get frustrated as my 4-year-old. Oh. Why is that?
Because that phone is in between you and them. It's seemingly that is more important, or that has their attention and not you. Just out of curiosity, how many people have their phones out when they're having conversations with people, or on the desk or on the table? Thank you for your honesty as well, and actually a few more hands went up. So my invitation would be, just put it away. Because then the other person feels, okay, you're here for me, you have my full attention, that's great.
Is it true that I can actually pay attention to my phone and to the meeting or my friends at the same time?
I don't know, let's ask the audience. Do you think it's possible? No.
Who was that?
Who's heard of multitasking? And who thinks they're a great multitasker? Just hands up. Okay. Not possible. It's a fallacy. Our brains can only focus on one thing at a time. It can switch very quickly, but again, productivity tends to decline, and so I would offer the suggestion of just one thing at a time. So not possible.
So if they're telling us that we are superhero mothers because we are great at multitasking, that's not true?
I'm not going to go into that one because it's going to be dangerous for me, but generally speaking, it's still not possible. Oh, I like the timer that we have. Okay, number 2. We talked about words, tone, body language is a critical component. And actually, I was chatting to Chris about this yesterday. We were talking about, this is eye contact. If you're making eye contact with somebody, then, for example, Jürgen knows that I'm talking to him and I'm listening to him. Although he's listening to me, he's making eye contact with me. A lot of people find this uncomfortable. You don't have to do it all of the time, but I would suggest that making eye contact really shows a level of engagement. Would you like to do something uncomfortable now? It's shaking heads. I like that. I take that as bait. So it's an invitation. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. So I'm just going to ask you to make eye contact with somebody else in the room and just hold that, and I'm going to count for 5 seconds, okay? So no words. I just want to see, and then we'll talk about how it feels afterwards. So starting in 3, 2, 1, just make eye contact, no noise, and just hold it. Okay, and 5 seconds is up. Well done.
Okay, there's a surprising note that because the people who looked the most uncomfortable, they were not actually looking at each other.
That's okay. So for some people it's uncomfortable, for some people it was amusing and enjoyable. Again, just take that as something to be conscious of when you're having a conversation with somebody, is make eye contact with them. It's a bit disconcerting if you're talking to somebody and they're looking at the ground the whole time. All right? But again, it depends on your personal proclivities. Number 3, paraphrasing. This is a really powerful tool that I tend to use when I'm coaching. It's not appropriate for every single conversation. But essentially, if somebody is talking to you, and you're listening, to check understanding, you can repeat back what they've said, but using your own words. Don't repeat back exactly what they're saying in their words. It'll be a bit weird. But this has 2 advantages. One, you can check understanding. Have I understood everything correctly? But also it shows that I'm engaged and I'm listening to what the other person is saying.
So Daryl, do I understand correctly that I need to listen to you more?
That would be nice, yes. I would appreciate it. But what did I just say about paraphrasing?
That I need to say, do I understand correctly? In my own words.
She wasn't
and
listening,
not like a robot.
She wasn't really listening. So paraphrasing works for 2 reasons. One, that it shows that I'm listening, and then it checks understanding.
I'm going to have a note, and I'm going to probably quote Chris on this one, because Chris mentioned people with ADHD, we have very short attention span. And this is a great technique because sometimes, as you just saw 30 seconds ago, I'm looking at Daryl, I'm having the eye contact, and I'm hearing what he's saying, but I'm like, there's darkness. I have no idea what you're saying. So this is a great tool.
I love you.
Oh,
really
thank you.
Right,
so this is a great tool, or just like very simple technique to make sure that you actually listen to the person, even if it's not working at that time. And Daryl's very kind, and he repeats that 3 times often.
So paraphrasing, very useful. Again, not for every single conversation, but again, if you want to check understanding and show that you are engaged and listening to what the person is saying, very useful tool. Number 4, questions. We're all aware of open and closed questions. Yes, we've all heard this before. How often do we ask open questions versus closed questions? Generally speaking, as Eliška alluded to earlier, we ask a question because we already know what we want the answer to be. Or we lead somebody down a path because that's the direction that we want to go in. These are my favorite questions because it leaves it really open. Rather than, did you have a good day today? What was great about your day? How did you enjoy? What did you fail at? Sarah Blakely, her father asked her every day, what did you fail at today? Really open question, elicits far more information from the person that you're asking the question to.
In that question is actually so much more. What have you failed at today? And I read an article about that. When you share that, you get used to failure and you can celebrate it and you get the lessons learned much quickly and you're more comfortable with that.
Yeah. But there's a time for closed questions, but open questions just allow the other person to provide whatever information they want to provide, not the information that you want them to provide or that you want to hear. Make sense? Yeah? Great. Oh, thank you. I love the affirmative yes from the front. Thank you. One person listening. Excellent. And then last one, point number 5, is don't interrupt. Oftentimes, again, we are speaking because we want to be heard, but then you've got to think from the other side, okay, well, the other person wants to be heard. But often we're then saying, well, what I'm saying is more important. If I'm interrupting somebody, we talked about devaluing, not listening. We think that, okay, but the other person then, what they have to say is more important than what I have to say. So if we can just listen, and I think Chris alluded to it as well. Did he allude it to today or last night at the dinner?
Well, I'm thinking about the same thing because we heard a talk,
yes.
and it goes
Yesterday.
all to the respect.
No,
Are we talking about the
dinner.
same thing?
No.
Okay.
It was at dinner. So he talked about pausing. So if you ask yourself 3 questions, and is Chris in the room? No, he's run away. Okay, but I think he said, do I need to say this? Do I need to say this now? Is it important? And by the time you've asked yourself those 3 questions, you've left enough space for that person to decide, have they finished speaking? In which case, then you can start speaking. So don't interrupt.
Do you find it hard sometimes not to interrupt the other person, especially if they're saying something you don't agree with? Do you have the strength to stop and just listen?
That's a good point. If somebody's speaking a lot, you're just waiting, you just want them to finish, you go, and you're waiting for that point in time. Again, very dependent upon situations, but generally speaking, if we can let the other person finish, they will feel heard. As we said, we want to feel heard, and then you can speak. It's just that
They will finish.
we assume they will finish at some point in time, yes. It's hopeful.
So there are some people, for example, like my brother, and you can't make eye contact with him, otherwise he's never going to finish. So if you have a colleague like
Good
that,
technique.
it
Take
is
that
a very different technique actually to be able to interrupt that person and break that cycle, because you're never going to have the chance to speak ever again.
Is that how it feels?
That happens if the person is on a Zoom call or something without the camera turned on.
Okay, interesting. We'll talk about some individual techniques to do that later. There are polite ways to interrupt people. But again, that's where paraphrasing can actually come in handy. You can actually stop somebody and say, let me just check that I've heard you correctly. And you can paraphrase what you've heard. They say yes or no, and then that gives you the opportunity to then put your point across, or then have them listen to you. Sorry, yeah, somebody was quick when I put this slide on. So how did it feel last time when you were interrupted? Again, we've talked about not being heard, not being listened to, frustration, disappointment. Okay, now we've got disrespectful, angry, irritated, annoyed, fair. So a lot of the similar emotions. And we don't really want to spend too much of our time in these emotions. You know, Chris beautifully did it with the music and it uplifted the mood. But it's then very interesting how when we have these conversations, we can very quickly get into these less than desirable moods, which actually will then impact how we continue to communicate or listen to that other person. OMG, nice, standoffish, frustrated, funny, I shall destroy you. Some awesome answers, I like it, that's...
Okay, I see a lot of, let's say, a bit negative emotions in this, but it can also be a good thing sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but if you have a person who doesn't know how to stop, it is a good still to remind them, hey, I heard you and I listened to you. Can we wrap this up so we are not wasting each other's time? And sometimes there's people not aware that they are talking too much, maybe, saying very, like me right now, saying very easy topic and so many sentences. Are you going to interrupt me, Daryl?
No, I'm just waiting for you to finish. But yes, we'll carry on. All right, so now this is, if you put it all together. So be present, be in the same space, focus, no distractions.
Do I understand correctly?
No, don't repeat it, no distractions, focus, make eye contact, and put your body language in a position where you're facing the person so they can tell that they have your full attention. Use paraphrasing as and when is appropriate. Use open questions, again, elicit more information from the other person, and then avoid interruptions. And I think we have some time now for you to go and put this into practice with the person that you happen to be sat next to, if you want to. Oh, you have a question, sure.
Because I think you didn't touch, because there are persons that like to ask questions but are impatient to listen the answer and they cut you off.
Sorry, you say that again.
There are persons that like to make questions, ask questions, or even ask for help.
Yeah.
But they like to cut you off as well. They don't even listen until the end. How do we deal with this kind of person? Because I know this kind of person, and for me it's just fine, but I think they need to change as well.
Yes.
Because they are the one who invited you to talk.
So the question is that there are some people who don't listen to you and they cut you off. How to... And they're the one who are asking the questions. So they ask questions and they don't listen. It's a perfect storm of annoyance. I think that's a slightly longer question to answer, but my general answer would be it depends. I'd want to know more about that relationship, because to me there's something that's dysfunctional in that relationship. There'll be a reason why they feel they can behave that way. I don't know if they do it with everybody, but it might be very... It could be somebody's personality, but there'll be a reason behind why they behave that way. So every behavior, generally speaking, if you look at NLP terms, people do things because that's the best thing for them to do. They think it's a great thing to do. So there'll be a mindset and an approach that maybe their learned behaviors had led to that, but I'd need to dig a little bit deeper as to find out why. So you're going to have enough... okay, we're going to do questions then. All right, you're not going to practice, we're going to do questions. That's absolutely fine. But let me just do a quick summary before we do questions. So be present, this is the most important one. Really, really be there. Put your devices away, spend time, be with that person. Practice. These things, we know all of these things. We know them, but how consistently do we actually do them? So just practice, remember, if anything, this has acted as a reminder, then to do these things. And then be proactive. Again, don't be passive in your listening, be active, be proactive in listening and also in the change that you want to make and hear and see. So we'll now do Q&A, but thank you very much. We'll say a thank you and then, yes, go for it.
Thank you for the great presentation. Since now the world is mostly remote, I'm missing some remote techniques because the eye contact and the body language, it's hard to achieve if people are on cameras, even off cameras. So maybe you have some additional advices, modern world advices.
For how to encourage communication or listening in
how to improve communication,
work.
how to show the person that you're actively listening, because you cannot show him like, hey, I'm switching off the phone, like it's not next to me. And how to be listened, how to be heard as well. Okay. Do you want to go with remote? So, I mean, cameras on for me would be an easy win. I know it's not possible all of the time, but I think everybody can have it on for a period of time, especially if it's important conversations. I've been on several calls when it was a first meeting and people had their cameras off. To me, that's super weird because you can't do that in person. I was like, all right, Arthur. Yeah, how's it going? All going well. It's just, it's a very bizarre concept. I mean, we're built for in-person interactions. And so I think to a degree, we've got to then think about the agreements that we have and the reasons why we have them. So if it's just camera on because we say that's the case, it leaves a lot of room for people to say, well, I don't feel like it.
If there's no camera option for that, we also found very helpful using the reactions, whatever software or whatever tool you're using, do the reactions, like encourage the reaction. It can be emojis, it can be thumbs up or comments, but there is another way how you can communicate with the speaker and show them that you're listening. Yeah.
What about to set organizational rules to turn on cameras?
Organizational rules to turn on cameras. Oof.
Oh, that's harsh.
But you seem so excited about it as well. I am not so sure about that because when things are forced, it's much harder for people to accept it. It's the analogy of if you're pushing people or if you're pulling them. So if you give a good reason why and you're encouraging a certain set of behaviors, then it's much easier. Whereas if you want to force it as a rule, people are always going to be resistant to things.
I have a colleague, and she does this very well. Every time she has meeting with her team remotely, they never turn cameras in the first minute. And she picks one person like, hey, can you show me your face? I don't really care if you don't look like yourself today. And the first person does that, and then she gets very excited, and she's like very appreciative, and then the other follows. You know, it's the first leader, or the first follower is the first follower. So if you do that, and if you show the appreciation that the people are actually showing their faces, because you don't care that they're not wearing makeup or they look like they don't look themselves today.
It's very, 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 very diplomatic of you.
Yeah, I don't want to use the
answered your
French
question?
language.
Answered your question? Yeah? You're standing in the wings, Fred. Do we have...
I'm going to give you some more time.
Oh, okay, great. More questions in that case.
Yeah. Hi.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you please repeat those 3 questions that Chris mentioned? I just remembered 2 of them.
Is it important? Is it important? Shh, give me time, give me time. Yeah, is it important? Is it important for me to say? Is it important for me to say now? Phew. Would it be embarrassing if I'd forgotten in front of a room full of people, wouldn't it? Yeah. No, it's fine, it's all good.
One small question. I have a colleague who is talking very much and doesn't stop to talk. And when I want to interrupt him, how I do it politely? Because you said interrupting is not a good thing.
Well, as I said, it depends. We all want to be heard.
Yeah.
And remember I said to this gentleman at the front here that if you can stop somebody and say, okay, great, let me just interrupt you. I just want to check that I've understood what you're saying. And you paraphrase back what they've said. So again, you've interrupted them politely, you've acknowledged the interruption, that you're doing it, you've paraphrased to check that you've understood what they've said for your purposes, and you've had them feel heard by repeating back to them what they've just said to you. I would say that's one of the most effective ways of doing it. Does that make sense?
That's the ideal situation.
Look at you, all so cynical. It's like, but if we practice these things, then people get used to it. We get used to doing it, and the other people get used to actually experiencing it as well. Yeah. Okay? Yes? Sure.
What advice can you give us when the people who are dominating the conversation are your manager or their manager?
Same principle applies. Listen, we've all stated up there that we all want to be heard and we all want to be listened to. So if you're listening to somebody and you're thinking, oh, Jesus, I just wish they'd shut up, we're not being very compassionate towards them, and they will feel that. Whereas if it is your manager or boss, you can say, hey, Steve, or what's your... No, we won't do your manager's name, it's fine. You know, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just need to check what you've said and that I've understood fully. I still think the same principle applies. It doesn't matter to who it is, your boss, your partner. It's a really effective way of acknowledging what you're doing, acknowledging that part of the conversation, and then enabling you to check understanding, but also get your word in as well. I think the lady had a question.
I was just asking, do we want to have very short activity or do we want to have questions?
No, it's too late now. They've ruined it for us, but it's okay. You can all practice afterwards. You have the tips, so yes.
Okay, so we are, as leaders, always want to be helpful, like help people when we have meetings with them.
Okay.
And how to grapple this inner feeling of listening to act, just when you're not listening, but okay, probably now he or she will finish and I will give her an advice. How to reach that present being when you're listening, how to practice that, I don't know, probably have a shorter conversations, or I don't know what to do with that.
You just answered the question.
Okay.
Practice, yeah. It doesn't come naturally. You know, these are things, it's like emotional intelligence. It's something that we can practice and build and get better at. And the more you do it, and I think you've got a great level of self-awareness, you're aware how you're listening and when you are listening, then just keep doing that and it'll get easier over time. Yeah?